Hello,
Come on.
everybody. We are so excited to have Susan Hull Walker with us of EBU. Susan you have such an interesting story and one that I cannot wait for you to share about how you got to where you are now with EBU, which is just when you look at your website, you see the beautiful craftsmanship from all over the world that you are able to showcase and sell and help different communities all over the world. So why don't we just start off today with you sharing a little bit of your story, like where you came from all the way to like where you are now.
Wow. Well, I would love to. It's a long story, so I'm going to make it very short, though.
No, tell us. Well, I love it. I mean, that's like one of my favorite parts. So you can take your time. We have 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I went through school, college, and then to divinity school, where I studied to be a minister. And I became a minister in Maine, and then I was a chaplain in San Francisco, and then in Charleston, and in the Congregational Church. And I loved my work, and somewhere in that whole process of trying to bring women more and more into the conversation in the church, I also, I felt really a pull towards doing something very creative. And, I went to this career counseling center to ask, try to figure out what that is. And they said, definitely you can, pursue this thread in obviously in new ways. And I went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, to study textiles. Now that seems like a big jump, but in fact, I was just following this thread, I like to say. And in fact, when I had been a minister, I was preaching, I was using the sacred text and interpreting them, but I always wondered what a woman's text would have sounded like, how it would have been different or not. And when I started studying textiles, I realized that women had the tools of needle and thread and shuttle and dye throughout human history, whereas men had been reading and writing and had text. Women had textiles, and it was their way to tell their story. And this just absolutely fascinated me. I jumped right into studying sort of the symbols and the meaning of textiles in different cultures. And then I realized that women were the ones who, they've carried these traditions throughout history. And these traditions, these sort of languages of cloth that women have carried, were about to go extinct. They were about to die because if women had never been paid for them. So they were things they did for their families. But they were exquisite skills. Somewhere in there, I'd become a weaver also. So I could look and tell how much better those women were than I would ever be at what they were doing. So I thought I would rather find a market for these women and their skills to sell to a market that I know, that I think would be willing to pay for the real deal. It's not just a little tourist trinket, like really their skills and their amazing textiles mostly, but then it became also jewelry and beading, and let their stories live on. So if they can get paid, then they can continue. And not only that, when they're paid, everything in their life changes. They are raised up in their communities and in their families. They receive a new kind of respect and self-respect. And they determine what to do with the money. They send their daughters to school. They take care of their children, health and education. And then they become leaders in their community and they get a voice. So I got very excited about this possibility of really working with women. And 7 years ago, I started EBU. I was in Indonesia at the time, and that's where I get the name. Ibu in Indonesia is sort of an honorific, like ma'am. It means like mother. You'd use it for your aunt or your teacher, someone that you look up to. And I wanted all these artisans to feel like they are respected and people look up to them for what they carry in their bones and in their memory, what their mothers taught them and their grandmothers. So my two goals when I started EBU was to put money in the hands of women. Hence, that's why I'm talking here today, because it just is such a connection, and to save these textile traditions. So it's a long answer, but in the process, I feel like very much a continuation of what I've been doing, and sort of elevating women and really appreciating their brilliance, really.
Yeah. Well, I love, there's so many parts of your story that I love and that we're going to dig into. But one of the things that has been sort of a theme of today, as we've talked to different women all morning, is how oftentimes, finding like what our true calling is and what our passion is like there are many steps to getting there. You don't just go to college and graduate and say, okay, I've found my calling, or at least most people don't. And as
No.
women, it's like, to give ourselves permission to explore and to try on different things. And then to also say, I went to divinity school and I've learned this, but now I'm really feeling led into learning more about textiles. And what seems to be going in like the opposite direction of where you are going now has given you such a special skill set to now like lift up these women in a way that other people might not be able to. And I love how you've followed that journey to get you to where you are now. And frankly, I can't wait to see like where you continue to go, because it just seems like that's part of your personality to listen and then to respond and like have the courage to take those next steps.
Like make like major drastic changes. That's true.
That's right.
That's been a part of my nature, but as it turns out, the continuity is really there. And I do think that's so important for all of us to listen, because when I made some of those changes, I didn't actually know yet why. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know I was following. And it became clear as I moved ahead. So I do think it's really important when we feel really strongly and we pursue what we love and where we feel we're being called.
Yeah. Well, so in that same vein, I mean, like, who have been your biggest encouragers throughout this journey?
Well, my husband, my husband has been one. He's just believed in me and what I'm trying, wanting to do. My team that I work with at EBU, I have a small team here in Charleston, and they sew all women, and they totally just believe in the mission and love it, love the energy of what we're doing. I try to make it always, fun and not, we're not better than anybody else for doing this. We're doing what we love and having fun doing it. So I couldn't have done anything without them. And then, those friends that just gather around and give you support all, when, during COVID, when things, retail was in such a ditch, but those people, friends, and I call them allies. We don't have customers, we have allies, and they just really came through.
Yeah. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about like the real business side of what you're doing now. Like, tell us, how do you make the connections in these communities of artisans?
Yes, we work with like over 100 groups now in like 40 different countries. So it's a lot to keep up with, and that's what the team really helps with. I meet them in all different ways, like sometimes just from traveling, and sometimes I go to Santa Fe to this beautiful market they have every year that has artisans, and I talk to them there and try to meet with them. And other people say, have you heard of this group? And you know how it is. Once you're in the field, people sort of hook you up with others.
Yeah.
And then I try to visit them. So this year I haven't done any travel because of the pandemic, but normally I do love to travel and go and meet the artisans. I want to learn what they are really good at, what's their skill, and then how can we interpret that for this market. And so we actually do design with them. We collaborate on the design on about half of our products. The other half, we just buy directly from the artisans exactly what they've designed because we love it. And so once I know we know the main leader of these cooperatives, who can speak English and do email, those are the two things we need, then we can do so much just back and forth. We send patterns that we've drafted, so we have sort of a consistent fit and all of that to our clothes. They have the fabric and the embroidery and the embellishment and everything. We draw it out, they work on it, but it's all based on what they are already doing. So we're trying to use their skills. And then they send samples. There's a lot of tweaking, a lot of back and forth. But eventually the product comes in and people seem to love it.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you and I talked about on our pre-call, and I love this terminology, I've never heard it before, but as you're working within these cooperatives and you have these communities where you're able to support these women and you're seeing changes within their lives and their families' lives and the community, and you talk about something called the soul of money, and like how that is kind of transformative. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
That phrase first came to me from Lynn Twist, who wrote a book called The Soul of Money. And she was a fundraiser. So she understood money as a form of power, not in a sense of power over anybody, but just a power to do things. And that it's like all kind of power or even energy, you might say, it flows through us. So money is not something we really own, but it flows through us. And if we have money, we are able to direct it to the things that we think are important. And that form of power is it's very creative. It's very, it's good for the world because we can make choices for the good of others through the use of our own money that's coming through us. I see it like a river. I think that was her metaphor, like a river running through us, and we can direct the flow of that money. And so money has not ever been something that it's not the reason I started EBOO. In fact, even though we are a business, a so-called for-profit business, we don't make a profit. We're social enterprise because I really want the profit to go to the artisans. And so that's not sort of a goal for me, money, as much as being able to direct the flow of it towards women who have never had it. And because they've never had it, they've never had a voice, they've never had choices. But when they earn their own money, all that changes. So the soul of money for me is sort of getting underneath, the surface meaning of it or what it can do for me, and more thinking about how it can flow through me into those, the lives of others and into those sort of things that I really care about. Does that make sense?
It really does. We have a partnership with a group in Rwanda, and they just have the most beautiful textiles over there. And I got to take my daughter, and it was just amazing to see that $1 here can do so much for a woman in Rwanda and her family. I mean, it's amazing how much farther it stretches and what an impact you can have if you can buy, depending on what part of the world, but like buy a goat that could, feed their family, or a chicken that can give them eggs every day and protein and things that'll just make their bodies healthy. Yeah. It's amazing. I've only seen a little tiny taste of it, so I can't imagine how much joy your work brings you and every single partnership that you have across the world.
It's so inspiring. The women are what inspiring. Women particularly in poor countries in the world, even though they've sort of been without for so long, they have a huge ambition in the best sense of the word. They're resilient, they're strong, they want better for their children. And it's just inspiring to see the lengths they'll go to, what they'll do to really make things happen out of their own hands, which is really what's beautiful. It's their own skills. And so they have such a sense of accomplishment, of earning, and of responsibility to sort of, many of them have these agreements like, we'll take a certain percentage of everything we make and give it to the schools, or let's build a school, or we'll clean the water. They'll make it better for everybody. And that's just such a win-win. I think
Yeah.
it's a different way of thinking about money and doing business than they've known in their communities.
Right. At the Wealth that when we've recently, as this is our first year. And so Lauren and I have, worked through, like, we had this idea of creating a community where women could come together and talk about wealth, acknowledging that wealth isn't just about money. It's about so many other things. And we were trying to come up like with our catchphrase, or, like, simplify what we're doing in 7 words, which is incredibly difficult.
Hard.
But one of the things we were saying was, it's like, we want women to be good with money so they can blank.
Fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank. So whether it's so they can be generous, so they can support their family, so they can leave an abusive relationship, so they can, send their children to college, whatever it is, we need to learn and to talk about and communicate, like, how are we using money in our lives in ways that aren't just about having the biggest bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we talk with women who want to be generous but don't know how to be generous. And whether it's just because, I can say from personal experience, I lost my husband and in an accident. And so here I was, now the new head of household, by myself. And even though I understood finances, like, I paid the bills, I did all the things. I'm an attorney. I kind of understood how it all worked together, but I didn't feel confident. I didn't know how to be generous because I didn't really know to what extent I could be generous. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because we need to be talking about that more and, like, incorporating women into this conversation about generosity. And it's like looking at these communities and hearing what you're saying. Oftentimes those with the least are the ones that are able to be, like, they understand how to be generous because there's needs, like, sitting right there in front of you that you like can't ignore. So now that you've, like, seen all those communities and how they've responded, like, how has that, like, impacted your life, and how would you encourage other women to, like, look around and decide how best to be generous?
Well, first I want to go back to your 7-word slogan.
Yeah.
That was so good. I know how hard that is. And I thought you were going to say, teaching women to be good with money so they can do good in the world. So in other words, yes, the more you can own and manage your own resources, the more effectively you can use them for good.
Right. And that's what it's like for me to understand my real financial situation. I could then go out and, like, confidently be generous.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that was such a big deal for me to finally feel like I feel confident enough in, like, where I am that now I can go out and be generous. And that was such an empowering place to be. But it took a little work.
It does. Because it doesn't serve women. It doesn't serve us to be fuzzy, to be unclear about money and just to sort of not want to deal with it. Like, I think we're sort of taught, I was taught that, like, don't spend too much time thinking about it, but the clearer we are, then the more effectively we can. It's just like with any of our resources, not just money, our own talents and so on. The clearer we are about what we really have been given, then we can give away also without giving more than we're able. We can give away effectively. So
that's such a good word.
Well, in terms of the other women, they inspire me so much. And so what I would say is just that the satisfaction that I have gained by working with women and doing what I love, because that's really what makes it work, is that I love this. And it's not just sort of something I think I should be doing. It's something I really love doing. So by following that, I think I have more reward than building up a large bank account. This is where the joy is. This is where the satisfaction is. And money is one part of that, because we have to take care of ourselves and we have to be smart about it. but it's not the end goal.
Yeah,
It's
and
a,
that's,
it's a means. It's a means, but it's not the end goal.
I love how you've explained that, because I think that that's a lot of why women don't talk about money, because it really, to our core, I don't know many women that are like, I need more money, or like money is what gets me up in the morning. I remember I was sitting at this, I used to work, we have a private advisory practice in Alabama. And it's so funny because I worked at this big firm for forever. And hold on, we're changing our video. But we worked at this big firm for forever, or I did. And I remember this guy came up, and he was supposed to be like the motivational speaker to get us to, bring in more clients, I guess, or something. And he said, I know what you want. You want the fancy car, you want this, that, and all the things he listed. I was like, I don't want any of that. Like, honestly, I can't think of anything nothing on his list. He named about 10 things were what I want. And I think that sometimes is the disconnect with women and money, that like for women, what money does for them is it gives you choices, or it gives you power to then allocate your resources the way that you find to be the most powerful or influential for your family, for what you're doing in this world. I think that's what it does, which is a little bit of a shift. And when we're taught by our mamas, and I had an awesome mom, but we didn't talk about money, and that's it, I think that that's what we're trying to do. That's our mission, is the more you know about it, the more you can do with it that's going to help you and the people that you love the most. And so anyway, I just love how you phrased all this today, because it's really helpful language, I think.
Well, I think it's very helpful what you all are doing, and I'm really happy for it, because women do need a language. They can't really own and operate something they don't have the language for. So you're giving women a language to talk about money. You're giving them a way to talk about it and think about it that's not totally just mercenary and greedy, but is responsible. Because if we don't think about it and we don't take care of it, we're not being responsible. And then we end up sort of dependent on someone else. And that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I do think a lot of it is about choice, making choices. That's what I feel like with the women in other countries that I'm working with. The number one thing that they receive is choice to what to do with their money. And then the second thing is the self-respect that they have, they've earned it, and they have an ability to, to manage it. Even if it's someone here who didn't earn their money, they still can take responsibility for that inheritance or whatever it is, and be good stewards of it.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, this has been such a fun interview. I can't believe, we'd love to spend more time with you. We hope you'll come back on and teach us more. And we're just so grateful for you.
I'm honored you asked me. Thank you. It's been fun to talk to you and to hear about what you're doing. I wish you so well. I think this is really needed and important. And I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, and that I could be a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.